Harvey's Hot Takes with Bryan Hayes. We finally found a screen worthy of Bryan Hayes' talents. Bryan, it's great to see you. You look fantastic. Interesting weekend for the Edmonton Oilers. You know, you're coming off Connor McDavid scoring the game winner, the championship winner in the Four Nations face-off, and then they promptly dropped two straight on the road and just looked really terrible, quite frankly. And their goaltending duo allows 11 goals over 2 games. And Craig Button was on the show yesterday, and he suggested the Oilers should just go out and try to get Jordan Binnington. How badly do you think Stan Bowman needs to shake things up and go out and acquire a goaltender before the deadline?
I think it's a very, very serious proposition, and I really do think Craig is on to something. You mentioned Jordan Binnington. We all just saw it. We know what he's capable of doing. If he's available, I think it's absolutely imperative a team like Edmonton would call on him, because you look at the goaltending situation. There was Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard. They rolled the dice last year. It worked out, right? It came up for them. Everything worked out. And they went to Skinner, then they went to Pickard, then they went back to Skinner. They made it all the way to a Game 7 of a Cup final. I cannot imagine you roll the dice again and it works out that way, considering these guys are playing worse than they did last year. And I do know Skinner, in particular, who is their number one, still has, 25-plus games here to try to figure this out. And he did come home down the stretch last year playing very well. But the stats, they're horrible, Jay. I mean, there's no way of sugarcoating this. Stuart Skinner has a sub-900 save percentage. Goals saved above expected. That's the big fancy stat. That's the modern goaltending analytic that everyone points to and everyone references. Stuart Skinner is not even in the top 50 league-wide when it comes to that statistic. And Calvin Pickard is even worse. So the numbers aren't any good. The way they played consistently, not very good. And I know in Edmonton there's a lot of focus on the defense. Maybe another defenseman in the top 4, ideally a right-shot defenseman. They brought in John Klingberg. He's not going to be the answer. But we're talking about a scenario here where Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl in their primes, and they're going to be ready to go come playoff time. We know that's happening, right? There's a little bit of malaise going on. They had an awful weekend this past weekend. Goalies were awful. The team was terrible. They're going to get there, though. They're going to get there, you presume health, and they're going to be ready to rock. And for me, it's going to come down to goaltending. And the fact of the matter is, the way the sport works, it's kind of like quarterbacking in football or pitching in baseball. If you don't have it, you lose before you even start. And as it currently stands, I do not have faith in Skinner and or Pickard. So I think Craig Button's onto something. I'd be calling St. Louis off the hook. If Binnington's available, bring him in. You know he's ready for the opportunity, and you know he's going to step up. So it is the prime concern for me in Edmonton. What you're going to get out of those two guys. It was hanging over them last year. It worked out. Again, I don't think you roll the dice and it comes up the way you want it to again this year. I would absolutely prioritize goaltending and a big upgrade if I could between now and the trade deadline.
The other lightning rod issue in the West is the Vancouver Canucks and the play of Elias Pettersson, Bryan. Pettersson, no shots. Forget about no goals. No shots in Sunday's loss to Utah, whereas JT Miller, 2 goals in New York's Sunday victory. Is this like the worst case scenario if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan at this point?
Yeah, it absolutely is. This was always the terror that you move off JT Miller, he gets to New York, he looks very comfortable, he starts looking like himself again, which people were very familiar with in Vancouver and how elite of a player he is. And all of a sudden the focus is going to be on Pettersson because there's no more shielding him. And Miller was shielding him for a long time in his career in Vancouver, right? JT Miller was taking on a lot of the heavy minutes and the heavy competition on the opposition and allowing Pettersson to do what he's been doing in the past. And the fact is, like you said, Pettersson doesn't even register shots. He has 1 goal in 2025. 1. It's almost March. This guy, he doesn't score. He does not produce points. And with Miller out of there and the rest of the offense looking very, very just meek out there, it just doesn't look as if they're anywhere close to being explosive. They're going to have a decent defense score, especially when Hughes is healthy. The goaltending has definitely been debatable at times, but Lankinen has saved their season, and now he's got a deal. He's going to be there long term, and you hope that Demko returns at some point. But ultimately, what sticks out about this team and what makes it so crazy, considering where they were this time last year, is the Elias Pettersson story. And just, he looks completely lost. He has no confidence. He doesn't want to handle the heat. He claimed that he did. When Miller left, he said, I want the pressure. When he signed the contract, he said, I want the pressure. Well, you've got it. You're the highest paid player on the team. You've got a letter on your jersey, and you're doing nothing offensively. It is staggering how the wheels have fallen off this guy. And there's a no-move clause, a no-trade clause that kicks in on July 1st. I've said it to you countless times over this season, Jay, that I'm not convinced he'll be in Vancouver long-term, but he's playing himself, I'm sure, off a lot of teams around the league that would look at him and say, what is this? What are you doing? How are you going to bring anything of value to the table considering how much money you're making? It's staggering, and he always looks sour. He always looks down. He always looks like he doesn't want to be there. It's just an unbelievable turn of events when you consider where Vancouver was last year with a healthy Demko, with Miller and Pettersson offering that 1-2 punch, with Quinn Hughes coming alive the way he did last year, winning that Norris. Rick Tocchet wins the Jack Adams. Now they're barely in the playoffs, but that's what kind of makes it so compelling here, Jay. And what is saving Pettersson, in my opinion, is that they're still in the playoffs. And they still very well could make the playoffs. And it's going to likely come down to his stick and his ability to get hot and finally contribute the way that we know that he can. Because when he's red hot, he is such a great player. He's so much fun to watch, Elias Pettersson. In the market, they loved him from the hop. The second he got drafted there, the second he showed up as a rookie, he was electric. And he got the money, he got the contract. Miller's out of town. Hughes is banged up. Demko's banged up. It's all about Pettersson, and he's just simply not pulling his weight. And if they miss the playoffs and he finishes the way that he's been starting this season, all hell could break loose by the end of this year, leading up to the draft, leading up to July 1st. It has been the most flummoxing story all season in terms of an individual player, Elias Pettersson. And you just referenced what he did over the weekend. I don't know when it's going to change, but the only way they make the playoffs is if it does change, and it's got to rapidly change and quickly for Pettersson and the Canucks.
Might as well keep this theme going of teams that struggled over the weekend, Brian. Pittsburgh Penguins, a couple more losses. They give up 13 goals. All of this, again, off the Four Nations face-off where Sidney Crosby looked so great. We're going to go back to it, buddy. You're the one who is banging the drum that Crosby should be forcing his way out of town and going to a contender. He always says he doesn't want to do it. The Pittsburgh media would like this to quiet down, but it's hard for us to not talk about it because there's no way that Crosby can be happy playing out his final days on a rebuilding Penguins team. Can he, Brian?
My hope is that this message resonates more because I'm on this massive, massive screen in Studio 6 with you right now, and hopefully it finds its way to filter through Pittsburgh media a little bit easier as I play the role of Wizard of Oz, and I try to whisper, if I have to, for Sid, please, Sid, you just went through 10 days of absolutely electric hockey where you were back to looking like you were prime Sidney Crosby, a guy that can contribute to a championship-winning team, which we all know you still can. I'm hoping that the Four Nations face-off finally did trigger that. The last thing that was necessary for Sid to realize how different it is, the comparing and contrasting a winning environment to a losing environment. And listen, there's nothing wrong with this in Pittsburgh that you're going into the down cycle. They've had an incredible 15 years. They went to 4 Stanley Cup finals. They won 3 of them. They have been electric basically since he walked in the league. But they have been a terrible, terrible team for about 2 years now. And they are legitimately one of the 4 or 5 worst teams in the league. Like, that's just a fact. You have San Jose and Chicago probably on their own. Maybe Anaheim's in there. But when you look at the East, it's Buffalo and it's Pittsburgh. That's what they are. That's who they are. And Kyle Dubas, I think, has made it pretty clear based on his actions. He's likely just going to retool / completely rebuild. But you're stuck with Sid. And you're stuck with Gino. And you're stuck with Letang. And they might trade off Rickard Rakell. They might move off Brian Rust. And maybe they try to find a way to move off Carlson. And then what do you really have? And honestly, I keep pleading this. I'm pleading it on your show. I'm pleading it on my show. I hope Sid looked at that ride with Nathan McKinnon, with McDavid, all eyes on him again, which is so deserving. He's so worthy of it. And he finally realizes that's enough. Like going from Thursday night in Boston, Canada, USA, to Saturday where Pittsburgh got pumped. I mean, you couldn't find a bigger compare and contrast scenario in pro sports. So I'm hoping, my fingers have been crossed for a long time. We'll see what he ends up doing here.
Finally, Brian, you mentioned your show, your radio show, Overdrive on TSN Radio in Toronto. Terrific program. And I noticed that on Monday, you guys continued to talk about the handshake seen around the world. Let's take a look.
Guess what's happening in public?
The handshake.
Dude, it's one thing, like, I like doing it with Hazy B or whatever. I don't want to do it with people I don't know in public. They're like, I guess this is the new thing. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's not a new thing.
You're the handshake guy.
No,
it's been established.
It's you that brought it up. You said he just loves it. He compliments himself and then wants a handshake. Now people want to handshake me in public that I don't know. And ever since COVID, I don't want any part of stranger handshakes. So let's.
Oh, I think the handshake's coming back.
It is coming back.
It's a great sign of where society is.
Jeff O'Neill and I have decided that we are going to shake hands every time he's on our show. And he's only on our show quarterly, Bryan, so it's not going to happen that often. How about you guys? Are you going to start to end every edition of Overdrive with a couple of hearty handshakes between the three of you?
I would love to do that, and he's putting up a good front here, Jay. He's pretending as if he doesn't want to be out there handshaking. He loves to handshake.
Yes.
He loves the handshake. He's very comfortable handshaking people he doesn't know. It's all an act, right? He loves it. He's so comfortable when it comes to handshaking. You saw it. I mean, I got to give him credit. That was a 5-star professional handshake. When he extended his hand to you, that was Emmy-worthy stuff, man. That's sports Emmy stuff because it was just perfect textbook handshake material. You were waiting for it. You guys hit it. And yeah, I support it too, man. I think it's a great sign of the times. Listen, we had a dark period in our history from about 2020 up until 2022, 2023. We're a couple years removed from that. I think we got to get back into making handshakes great again. And it's led by Jeff O'Neill. That's exactly what he's doing here. He's a driving force. He's a maverick, and I love it, and I support it greatly.